Good morning, Adibola.
Good morning, guys. Olive and Osarogie. Happy New Year. I don't think
that's true. This is the first time we're seeing this year.
Yes.
Happy New Year.
Happy
and
New
welcome
Year.
back.
Well, the new year is getting old now, so anyway.
Indeed it is. It's too early for all the drama that we're seeing in social media, we're seeing in the political space. Which would you say has been the most shocking for you?
I mean, it's a wave of probes and allegations, investigations. I mean, just on Wednesday, the former Minister of Power and Steel, and that's Olu Agunloye, has been remanded for, allegations of fraud, mismanagement, of funds. We're looking at the likes of former Minister of Humanitarian Affairs, Sadiya Umar Farouk, being, interrogated by the EFCC. The recently suspended Minister of Humanitarian Affairs as well. That's Better Edu. So it's raining probes, allegations, investigations here and there. Let's hope this new disposition of the government will, ensure all those at the helms of affairs, sit up and do their duties rightly.
Right. I hope it's not just, probe, social media probe. It actually gets into us seeing the end of these, because what we usually see, we say this all the time, is noise on social media. Noise that gives the impression that they're working, and at the end of the day, nothing is being done. We forget about the person and move to the next trending matter.
No, true. I said it yesterday that I wasn't very impressed, but it doesn't mean that, these aren't good. They're good, that everyone who has maybe mismanaged Nigeria's funds, mismanaged funds that were, handed, that were passed through their ministry, be of course made to account for them. Absolutely. But does this really, will this in any way improve on our transparency, international corruption index? I don't think so. Does this really fight corruption? I don't think so. I feel like we still haven't been able to impute proper systems in government that would stop corruption in the first place before, sending people to jail or not. But we'll see how this goes. Today, of course, there's going to be more revelations. There's, of course, conversations of people transferring billions of naira into their personal accounts. There'll be more revelations. There'll be more of these conversations happening today, amongst other things that we are looking at. Of course, as one of the big stories. Yes, of course, defections from one political party to the other. Some of the things that we're also going to be, I think also caught my attention. When people talk about ideologies, I just laugh because it doesn't exist in Nigeria's political space. And I'm talking now about Daniel Bwala and his decision, of course, to maybe return to the APC after bitterly and very vocally condemning the APC with every breath that he had in the last long while. But, of course, this is what we expect in Nigeria. We'll see how it turns out.
All right, Devola, we'll have you join us for breakfast headlines, but let's share what our top stories are this morning.
Yes, this morning, it's political transfer season. Bwala praises the APC.
And CBN lays off top managers in 4 major banks. It's one of the stories we're looking at this morning on Breakfast Central.
Also this morning, PDP calls for suspension of Interior Minister Olabunmi Tunjiojo.
Is the Edo State Governor a betrayer? This is something that we're asking, we'll be looking at shortly.
And of course, we'll be looking at South Africa as it faces a rise in suicide cases.
All these and more on Breakfast Central. Now let's bring you breakfast headlines.
Africa is rising. Again, we hear our sounds echo on the other side. Afrobeat and Afropop reinvented, hip life brought back to life, new energy infused into Kwaito and Kwela. Africa is balling. Every stroke, every shot, every raise, we find our place at the top. Taking the helm of real power, new hopes for democracies. A breed of entrepreneurial tigers, audacious storytellers, and a promising generation raring to go. Truly, Africa is rising. And this is where the stories that define our continent live.
Hello and welcome to Breakfast Headlines here on News Central TV. I am Adebola Adediba. We begin in West Africa, where the Central Bank of Nigeria has dissolved the board and management of Titan Trust Bank and 3 others. This followed a report submitted to the President, Bola Tinubu, by the Special Investigator on the CBN and related entities, Jim Obaze. The others affected are Union Bank, Polaris Bank, and Keystone Bank. The report of the special investigation into the activities of the CBN had accused the immediate past governor of the Apex Bank, Godwin Emefiele, of acquiring banks for himself through proxies. A federal high court in Abuja on Wednesday ordered the remand of a former Minister of Power and Steel, Olu Agunloye, in Kuje Correctional Service. The Economic and Financial Crimes Commission arraigned Agunloye over allegations of fraud in the Mabila Power Project, but he pleaded not guilty to the charges read against him. Staying in West Africa, Liberia's former Chief Justice and Justice Minister, Gloria Maya Musu Scott, has been sentenced to life in prison for the murder of her niece, Chalo Musu. Her trial held that she, along with 3 other women, intentionally and maliciously inflicted severe bodily injuries on her niece at home last June. In East Africa, local sources say Somali armed group Al-Shabaab has seized a United Nations helicopter along with about 8 people, both passengers and crew. The helicopter landed in a territory controlled by the group in central Somalia. Some reports say it had been forced to make an emergency landing, while others say the landing was a mistake. In the meantime, Somalia's president says his Eritrean counterpart has declared support for the Somalia's sovereignty amid tensions with Ethiopia over a controversial sea access deal. Eritrean leader Isaias Afwerki voiced the stance in a meeting with Somali President Hassan Sheikh Mohamud during a 2-day visit to the Eritrean capital, Asmara. UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak is facing a significant rebellion from Tory MPs over allegations to revive his plan to send asylum seekers to Rwanda. Over 30 backbenchers on the right of the party are backing plans to change the bill next week to make it harder for people to appeal deportation. And now to some health matters. Uganda will destroy expired COVID-19 vaccines worth $7.4 million following a slump in the demand for the jabs, with more stocks due to lapse by next year. Uganda's Auditor General, John Mwanga, in a report says the East African nation used a loan from the World Bank to import the vaccines, and nearly half of the existing stock, around 12.6 million doses, has expired. In Southern Africa, Zambian authorities expect to receive the 1 million cholera vaccine doses from the World Health Organization amid an outbreak that has killed 249 people since last October. Roma Chilengi, the health advisor to the president, Hakainde Hichilema, says the doses will be deployed to the most at-risk region and are due to arrive by Saturday. At least 3 community leaders in Mozambique have been killed and around 50 houses set on fire following a wave of misinformation about a cholera outbreak. Officials say most of the attacks have been led by the Naporamas, a militia group that has taken up arms against terrorists in the northern Cabo Delgado province. And that's all on Breakfast Headlines. It's back to Osarogie and Olive.
All right, thank you very much. Once again, very interesting stories there in different parts of the continent. But here in Nigeria, there were fears yesterday with the dissolving of the board of these banks that you mentioned, and I saw that a couple of people panicked whether their funds were safe. But the CBN, of course, had to put out a message, I believe, to assure Nigerians that funds were safe. It had nothing to do with the running of the bank. It was just the board members that were dissolved. Of course, I'm sure that new people would be assigned to hand over or to carry on those responsibilities. And of course, everyone's money is safe in these banks that were mentioned. But of course, it's still a developing story, and we'd like to see how it goes. I think it's in relation to the investigation into the former CBN governor, Godwin Emefiele.
Well, and I'm hoping the CBN, like they have rightly assured the citizens that have their monies in this bank, that hey, you know what, your monies is all your funds is safe, your monies are safe. I hope indeed the monies of those who have deposited in these banks are actually safe. Beyond the issues with the banks happening, let me find out from you what you make of the call by the former Deputy Governor of Lagos State, that's Femi Pedro, asking that the suspended Minister of Humanitarian Affairs, Betta Edo, be given a second chance, saying that she has learned from her mistake. What do you make of that call to pardon her?
Well, I don't think that it's our position to make a call, right? I think what is regarded here was a crime committed, was an offense committed, was a law broken. What is the usual what's the usual remedy or the usual response to situations like this when a certain code is broken or when a certain law is broken? What should be the necessary steps? So I don't think that we are in the position to decide what the necessary steps are, but I'm hoping that the government does what needs to be done. I mean, this is something that has come to light. It cannot be swept under the carpet again. And I'm hoping that it will unearth more scenarios like this where there's been anomalies in different ministries, because we believe that this is the norm in a number of ministries. It's not just with the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs and Poverty Alleviation, that this is business as usual in several other ministries. But you must understand that it is the monies that is meant to be going to the poorest of the poor, that there are some people that will not be able to have their next meal because this money did not get to them. So it's not a situation of, this person, let's be kind to this person made a mistake. You must understand that the lives of Nigerians were at risk by that action of not having the money sent to them at the time that it should have. So, I mean, that would be my take.
Yeah, and I agree, because, I mean, it's pretty much the same argument with saying that because we're not having passports, Tunjojo should be let off the hook, if he committed any financial crimes, or, of course, any of the things that he's been accused of. Because he's been a nice guy and he's given us, passports now, please, let's forgive him. We might as well say the same thing we got to Emefiele. I'm sure there's people who speak in his favor and say, well, he was such a nice guy when he was CBN governor. He was really, really hardworking. I'm sure he's learned his lesson, after being in police custody for so long. Let's forgive him. But I don't think it works that way. Femi Pedro, of course, is entitled to his opinion, but it doesn't work like that. If we're a serious nation that is, hopefully in, the nearest future trying to actually stamp out, not necessarily stamp out corruption, but at least reduce it. And of course, reduce the stealing of Nigeria's funds, because for me, that's one of the biggest problems, that there's so many avenues through which funds are leaked, or Nigeria's revenue leaks out and doesn't get back to government coffers. And for me, the money that we lose in that regard is probably even more than the money we lose, through the customs and every other way that Nigeria loses funds, or even through oil. So I think the law should take its course. If she has erred, if she needs to be suspended and prosecuted, I'm all for it. Unfortunately, I don't even think that we are that country that would prosecute. We stop at suspension and then find somebody else to replace, and business continues from there. So if there has to be a prosecution for mismanagement, for a financial crime, then let there be prosecution. If it requires maybe you have to pay a fine or to go to jail, I don't know. But go all the way, that's my point.
Well, let's hope this disposition of the new government, President Bola Tinubu, will, be a wake-up call to all those, at the helms of affairs, the ministers, to sit up and act right, knowing that whenever it is they err, they're likely to be brought to book. If they're found out. Absolutely. Because that's for me, and I said it yesterday, that we wouldn't be talking about this thing if that document didn't leak. So it's now dependent on who is caught and which documents leak. If you remember when Buhari came in, we had the same thing. The first few months of Buhari's administration, there were EFCC cases left and right. People were being chased up and down. Judges had their houses broken into, at some point. And eventually, we still have the same disgusting levels of corruption 8 years later. So we'll see where this leads. But thanks a lot for stopping by. We'll see you at 9. Glad to be here. All right. Stay with us this morning. We, of course, have big stories coming your way as we move into our top stories right next here on Breakfast Central.
Africa needs its own storytellers, people who understand the continent because they're from it. People who know that news is more than just a conversation starter, it's our stories. Because these stories run deeper than headlines and segments. It's about digging deeper to get the facts and telling the human side of every single story, not just the echoes from foreign headlines and perspectives. It's time to take back our narratives and share them in our voices. The birth of Africa's New Age reporting, and this is where it begins, right here at NewsCentralTV, the stories that put Africa first.
Welcome once again to Breakfast Central. We begin the conversations this morning in South Africa, where suicide is a grave global concern. Now, with the World Health Organization reporting approximately 800,000 deaths annually, making it the second leading cause of deaths among individuals aged 15 to 29. These staggering figures underscore the urgent need for comprehensive mental health support and resources on a global scale.
Within this global crisis, South Africa has become one of the highest suicide rates globally, ranking at number 10 and second in Africa after Eswatini. With 23.5 suicides per 100,000 individuals, South Africa faces significant mental health challenges, while factors such as socioeconomic disparities, high levels of violence, and limited access to mental health services contribute to the distressing rates.
Now, according to the Gauteng Emergency Management Services call center, by 10 p.m. on New Year's Eve, it had responded to over 1,500 calls, most of them which were suicide attempts. In South Africa, while billions of people across the world were ushering in the new year with merry celebrations and resolutions, thousands of South Africans were on the verge of ending it all. Now, while, this might be numbing, it reflects on how the socioeconomic situation in South Africa is hurling thousands of people into unimaginable depths of desperation. Our guest this morning is the director, Teddy Bear Foundation for Abused Children, Dr. Shahida Omar. Good morning, Dr. Omar. Thanks for joining us. It's seemingly, shocking statistics and realization that South Africa has these suicide figures. It looks like such a happy country, a beautiful country at the same time. So help us understand the disparity between the way South Africa looks, and of course, why the suicide rate is so high.
Suicide is not something to be seen in isolation. This is a systemic challenge, a systemic problem experienced by society, and South Africa is ranked or rated as one of the 9th highest countries to actually have high statistics on suicide. And if we look at the fact that children, and because our core mandate is working with children up until the age of 18, until they reach the age of majority, we find that children often find themselves trapped in anxiety, depression, post-traumatic stress disorder, as you have highlighted earlier around the issue of violence. But if, you mentioned New Year, and during the New Year, and of course, actually starting 2024. And when I speak about systemic challenges, one needs to look at what are the risk factors. So we know that a lot of children have written exams, and of course it's also the matriculants results that will be released, and the anxiety is escalating as a result of that, and where children feel they haven't performed well, the low self-esteem, the issues of feeling trapped, the issues of hopelessness, helplessness, and seeing no way out. So the important thing here is the number of calls that have been received are people who actually feel there are no options and no way of escaping the situation. They feel that the only way out is actually taking their life where, that would actually resolve the situation or the circumstances they're faced with. Now, as I mentioned, the systemic challenges, we know there's issues of dysfunctionality in families, unemployment, many other stresses that children and families are faced with. And these are all contributory and risk factors. But in terms of resources and access to resources, we need to actually understand that there are facilities available. But the challenges that we face with is the rural areas, the more impoverished context, who actually do not see a way out, or who actually do not have the ability to access these resources, despite the fact that these are zero-rated calls, that these are toll-free lines like SADC, the South African Depression and Anxiety Group, Childline, there's Lifeline, there's the Gender-Based Violence Command Center. And I think we need to appreciate that children and families are not always in a position to reach out and get the necessary support they deserve.
Thank you, Dr. Omar, for helping us get a clearer picture of this so we don't look at the case of suicide and mental health in isolation. But I want to talk about the impact that culture and religion has on conversations regarding mental health in South Africa. What would you say the impact is, and would you consider it maybe a stumbling block to some measure?
Thank you for that. I think you've raised a very pertinent issue here. And mental health or concerns around mental health is still seen as a stigma in many communities, many population groups, and therefore seeking professional help, intervention, whether it's from psychological services or mental health professionals, is often seen as a failure, the inability to cope. It's seen as a weakness, not as a strength. And I think this is what holds people back from reaching out and getting the necessary support and intervention that they so desperately need. So there needs to be a lot more awareness raising around mental health, around well-being, around prevention, around self-care. I think these are issues that need to be dealt on different levels, starting with children when they're very young, from the time they are able to engage in dialogue, and moving on to the senior school levels and even the tertiary institutions, but broader and wider in the workplace settings, in public settings, in faith-based organizations. So bringing together a coordinated, collaborative effort, integrating the importance of mental health and the implications of not addressing mental health, the impact it would have, the negative impact on the individual and the families moving forward.
All right, and I still want us to talk a little about stigma. You've mentioned that there's still some level of stigma attached to mental health, and very valid points you've raised there. I'm hoping that we can start to see education about mental health from the primary to the tertiary education and even to the family units. But as society, as members of society, what are some of the statements or actions that we can, utter or do that would further encourage stigma or encourage people or discourage people to share their mental health struggles?
Well, I think as a society, we need to get ambassadors on board, people that have gone through challenges and struggles and have reached out and received the support and the positive impact it has resulted in, where it's mobilized them into feeling healthy, well, and become successful. So the importance of reaching out from people who have actually experienced this kind of thing, but also to use multidimensional platforms, print media, community radio stations, national TV, around destigmatizing, challenges of mental health.
All right. Can you also shed some light on the disparities between, the gender disparities here? I could see in statistics that, more females than men, I think, attempt suicide, but it seems like it's the male attempts that are more successful. To shed a little bit more light on, how it affects women and how it affects men in South Africa, and of course, what are some of the triggers, that affect these separate genders?
So if we look at the female, we find that with females, they internalize their pain, and often, as you have so rightly put forward, that they're more likely to attempt suicide, but they're more likely to self-mutilate, self-harm, and of course, somatize. You would find that there would be somatic conditions which manifest itself as medical problems. So that is a very common thing where females would engage with. With males, of course, it is different, as you've articulated, that they are more likely to complete suicide. So the action is more aggressive and it's externalized. With females, you would find that the internalization would result in depression and other forms of mental health challenges. So males are seen to be, and I think that's a perception, a misperception, and I think we need to dispel that myth and debunk those kind of perceptions where they are seen and they feel the expectation is that they need to show more strength. And by completing suicide, it's showing that they are in control, they are in charge of their lives, an act of power. And I think these are things that need to be addressed, that there are other ways of dealing with challenging circumstances and situations, and resorting to such a destructive and devastating end is not the solution. As I mentioned earlier on, it's about options, making people aware that there are options available, that this is catastrophic and is not the only route to pursue.
Yeah, well, it's just really, really heartbreaking, and, some might even argue that mental health issues are really just a cover, or the easiest route to go to blame, on high rates of suicides, So are there any underlying factors that maybe are still not being spoken about well, that the government maybe needs to take a closer look at? If you take away mental health challenges, what else, is the government maybe not taking a look at?
Well, I think what we've talked about is that looking at all the risk factors and providing opportunities to children and families, and particularly if we look at poverty. Now, I know poverty does not cause death. I think there isn't this direct link, but it is a huge risk factor. The stress levels increase, and of course, it could contribute to dysfunctionality in the family. It could add to violence or domestic violence, the gender-based violence that we are all faced with, the scourge of GBVF. So I think there's a lot of work that is being done on the ground, but a lot more needs to continue, and the outreach needs to be in the more impoverished areas, something that still needs a lot more attention. But it's not just the outreach, but also ensuring that it's aligned to available resources, accessible and available resources.
Dr. Shahida Omar, thank you very much for joining us this morning. And we hope to be able to hear more positive news from South Africa regarding mental health. We want to see that the government is more concerned and that we can see a sharp decline in suicide rates.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Pretty important discussion there, and it just really tells a story of how, it might look beautiful and colorful, but mentally, there's a lot of people who are going through it, you know, and it's not just in South Africa, in many
around
other
the
parts of
continent,
the
yes.
yeah.
Even the world. It's just been, 2023 was that year where many people would say that they held happiness and held sadness in almost equal measure, because there were the world is facing global inflation crisis, and people are just struggling to make ends meet. But one thing I think that we do a lot that is hampering the progress we're making with mental health is because we do not understand someone else's pain, we then try to minimize it. So somebody comes to you and they're talking to you about their struggle, and then you say, oh, is that what you are dealing with? You're only small now. And then you started. So when I asked her about some of the things that we say and do unconsciously that make people not able to open up and share their pain, those are some of the things I'm referring to. People making it look like, oh, you're not prayerful enough, you're not spiritual enough. If you're prayerful enough, you will not be experiencing anxiety or depression. That's the impact of religion.
Those are societal, you know.
Yeah, so that's what I'm talking about.
Cultural,
so what are the things that we say as a society, that we say or we do, behavioral patterns that we're not aware discourages people from opening up? And that's one of them. There's the one of, oh, you're not tough enough, you're not strong enough, you need to learn to be resilient. But people's capacity to handle pain varies from person to person.
I agree, but, you know, I think it's also important, you know, it's also something we should do in the, you know, in the Nigerian context also, to be able to have a proper understanding of people that are dealing with mental health issues, and then people who are just having financial struggles. Because a lot of times, you know, if you hear about suicides in Nigeria, a lot of times it's always blamed on financial struggle. Even I saw one this morning, a lady who committed suicide, I can't remember what state it was, and was blamed on financial struggle that she was dealing with. That's what it is most of the time. But I don't think we have proper statistics for the Nigerian context on, you know, the ones that were proper mental, you know, depression and the likes that eventually led to suicide. We don't have that. So it's important to know which we are dealing with, so that we'll know which one that, you know, helping with changing our response to people's problems, or our response to people's complaints, you know, would help. If we don't do that, it's going to be hard to, you know, to simply just, you know, let people talk. And I talk to you and you can't solve my financial problems.
Well, sometimes one with a deep financial problem who is depressed shares their concern, you may not be able to meet their financial need, but sometimes all people want is an ear to listen and someone to just give them hope.
Still hungry. Anyway, all right, let's move away from that. Of course, we understand what must be done. The recent scandal surrounding Betta Edu, Nigeria's, well, now suspended Humanitarian Affairs and Poverty Alleviation Minister, is still topping conversations in the country, especially as one other minister in the last 72 hours, Olubunmi Tunji-Ojo, has now been roped in. In another twist, the president, in a bid to cut government spending, has also reduced the number of aides that accompany him and other top government officials on international and domestic trips. Bernard Ekede has more on this report.
Seeing that we can pull Nigerians out of poverty.
The suspension of the Minister of Humanitarian Affairs and Poverty Alleviation, Betta Edu, for authorizing the transfer of the sum of 585.2 million naira into a private bank account has sparked reactions among Nigerians.
The former humanitarian minister, the 44 billion was talked about, which is about 2%, less than 2%, about 1.5% of the 500 and something billion, because 500 is just half of a billion. And then you talk of 44 billion and half a billion, effectively. So how come that of Betta Edu came up and became so sensational is because of the persons involved.
This is what they came to do. They came to take care of themselves, and that's what they went to work to do. And you can tell that if you follow the trajectory of how they got here, apparently Betta Edu was reporting on her predecessor, you know, telling on the stories of how she was stealing money, and the EFCC was busy tracking. I think that was a distraction. Why she took a page from her book of sleaze and started her own scams. But there's nothing new here.
Adding to the scandal, a recently linked memo being circulated online shows that a company linked to the Minister of Interior, Mr. Tunji-Ojo, New Planet Projects Limited, received a substantial sum labeled as consultancy fees from the Minister of Humanitarian Affairs and Poverty Alleviation. while some have called this drama unfortunate, seeing as the minister has impressed Nigerians, especially with the improvement in the passport issuance process. There are those who believe that the Minister for Interior hasn't done anything special and should be brought to book if found guilty.
Because it's giving you passports that you paid for, that you're entitled to. No, you see, this is part of our problem as a people. There's so much mediocrity in our system, that we take for granted that these people are appointed or elected to do some jobs. And when they do it, you start praising them. This is what they are appointed to do.
While the affected ministers have since been summoned by Mr. President, the President, through his spokesperson, has made steps to cut costs by reducing the number of aides that accompany top government officials while traveling. Could this be a way to make amends for the corruption scandals rocking the country?
You look at the cost, like what is in the budget, the travel stuff is about, I think it's neighborhood of about 16 billion or thereabout. And even if you take off 60%, it comes down to nothing. We know where the cost in governance is. If you want to cut costs, it's a good step, don't get me wrong, it's a good step, but call people like us to come and tell you the Osarogie report where you should cut cost of governance.
These corruption scandals certainly do not look good on the administration of President Bola Tinubu, which has been in office for less than a year. Nigerians will be eagerly waiting to see what becomes of the two ministers in the eye of this storm, as the outcome could set an example for others. In Lagos for News Central, I am Bernard Akede.
Well, thank you very much, Bernard, for that very detailed report. We're going to be looking more at this. And today is the 11th of January, 2024. Every day we come on the show, we'll continue to ask the question, which way Nigeria? Today on Which Way Nigeria, we are looking at unraveling Nigeria's political class, the selfish pursuit of interest or selfish pursuit of power. Now, one of the underlying themes in Nigerian politics is selfish pursuit. That is the desire to hold office of any kind, not motivated by the desire to see a change. But what we see is the need to serve selfish interests. It's how slogans like divide the national cake and songs like share the national memory have become the unspoken mantra of the political class. It's just that this division that we're talking about here reflects inequality and economic disparity as it is done amongst themselves, their loved ones, those within their sphere of influence. What then is the hope of the common man who is yearning for genuine leadership? Now, as the nation continues to grapple with complex challenges, including, but not limited to, corruption, the rising cost of living, it's become imperative to scrutinize the motives of those that drive leadership and those that are entrusted with steering the ship. Now, not just at the federal level, but not just the state level. We're also looking at the local governments, the political parties, the smallest units of politics and leadership. If we check beneath all of this, we see that the motivation of a vast majority of our leaders is evident. It's manifested through their words, through their actions, through their inactions, keeping silent in the face of injustice, sending prayers to the emails of assembly members, diversion of funds meant for the poorest of the poor, driving luxury vehicles, defending of over-bloated budgets whilst asking the populace to endure. Endure? For how long will we continue to endure? How about the character of Nigeria's political class, who are infamous for aligning themselves with whichever political wind blows in their favor? Loyalty to ideologies or party manifestos often takes a backseat to opportunistic alliances aimed at securing personal beliefs. The political transfer is officially open. The political transfer window has seen a lot of transfers happening, with Doyin Okupe having announced his resignation from the Labour Party, referring to the party as a special purpose vehicle. It would seem that this vehicle, not having been able to deliver Peter Obi to the presidency, has lost its relevance. Well, besides ideological differences, and then there's Daniel Bwala, who, having strongly criticized Tinubu and the APC, has now made a U-turn and now sings the praises of President Tinubu and is most likely on his way back to the APC. Like Sound Sultan said, there truly is no place like home. How can I not mention the almighty Nyesom Wike, the Minister of the FCT, former governor of Rivers State and the guardian in charge of its untouchable political structure, a card-carrying member of the PDP and a loyalist to the APC? Or is it the other way around? Wait, which party does he actually belong to? The way that politicians swing between political parties makes one wonder if they have individual ideologies, and if these parties have ideologies themselves. One wonders if the politicians check that there's an alignment between their individual values and that of the political parties before choosing which political party to join. Or like Nigerians say, is it just anywhere belle fees? These political parties have been deemed to be one and the same, and a common joke is that politicians can go to bed in one political party and wake up in another. A clear reminder that in politics, there are no permanent friends or enemies, only permanent interests. The exploitation of ethnic and religious sentiments for further political gain shows and exacerbates the divisive nature of Nigerian politics, rather than fostering unity and nation building. Some politicians manipulate these fault lines to consolidate power, perpetuating a cycle of polarization that hampers social cohesion. Now, how do we break free from this pattern? There's a pressing need for a paradigm shift in the mindset of the political class. Leaders should embrace a vision that transcends beyond personal interests, focusing on the collective good and the long-term prosperity of the nation. But it's not just the politicians or the leaders. It's you watching. In your small circles of leadership, are you about your personal interests? If and when you become a leader tomorrow, are you also going to peel for the commonwealth of the nation so long as you and your family are okay? It's a long way to go if we must see the change that we need as a nation. They say that the 2024 mantra is no grief for anybody, but in some measure, I'll argue that this is reflective of our underlying selfish nature as a people. But then again, that's conversation for another day. And that's my take on today's important question: which way Nigeria?
And of course, a very interesting one there. Which way Nigeria? Sonia Okosun, of course, did that song in the 80s, I believe, or the 90s. Thanks very much to Olive for enlightening us and her thoughts. Now, in what may seem as a huge transfer, like they say in football, from the PDP to the APC, the spokesperson for the Atiku Abubakar presidential campaign in 2023, Daniel Bwala, yesterday paid a visit to President Bola Tinubu at the State House in Abuja. Now, speaking shortly after the visit, Bwala, who's a member of the, no longer a member of the, I'm not even sure, member of the People's Democratic Party, said he's committed to supporting Tinubu's administration to succeed. Let's take a look.
I honor the invitation of His Excellency President Bola Tinubu, who is a father to the nation, who God has given the opportunity to lead the country at this difficult time. And so I came to celebrate and congratulate him, and then to also give him our commitment that as citizens of the country, this is a time for all of us to throw our weight behind and support the administration. I gave an illustration of an aircraft that has taken off. The aircraft is the country. The passengers are the citizens. The pilot is Mr. President, his co-pilot is Excellency the Vice President. The cabin officials might be the ministers or other agents of the Federation. You may not like the takeoff of the airplane. You may have even your perspective about the way the pilot is, walking towards the turbulence, above the sea level. But one fact that must bind all of us is that the plane needs to land so all of us can be alive. When it lands, you can also say you don't like the way it lands. But at the 39,000 feet above sea level, the prayer of everybody, including the pilot and the passenger, will be the safe landing of the plane. Because if the plane crashes, apart from the aircraft getting destroyed, the pilot, the co-pilot, the cabin members, and all the passengers' life at risk. So at this difficult time, what we need is to throw our support and then see how we're able to navigate around, because there are difficult things in this country: hardship, poverty, insecurity, and the only way we can come together and support the achievement of this objective, I think, is for us to give our best in supporting the administration. So I came to congratulate him and then to tell him that I'm particularly excited about the recent policy decision he has taken to demonstrate that he's about the people and not just protecting his people. He took decisions against certain ministers who allegedly were, said to have committed infraction. The marked difference between him and the previous administration is that the previous administration may want to cover in order to avoid the backlash that the government is corrupt. But he is not about that. If this thing will touch on the poorest of the poor, humanitarian, that's the focus. And anybody who is caught wanting should not be covered. I told Mr. President I was thrilled by that decision. Yesterday again, he surprised us by the policy decision he has made to reduce the cost of governance. So it is like the unfolding. The most important thing in my communication with him was to look at his demeanor as he was talking to me about his passion for the country and the intention, to make sure that he leads a country with integrity. And you can have opinion from outside. When you sit from across table and you hear him, you can see what I've been taught as a lawyer is you not just know the law, you must know the demeanor of the judge. This informs your capacity to advocate. And that's what I did today. I was looking at the demeanor. I could see the passion and the conviction to lead. And that to me is exciting. It's not about party. This is about the country. I'm here as a private citizen and who must be bound by the conviction we have towards our country and the need for us to push the country to a better place that we all desire.
Well, Daniel Bwala needs to also be reminded that the pilot, without proper flight training and the likes, if he didn't go to aviation school or can't provide his certification from aviation school, should not also be allowed to fly the plane. Neither should the air hostesses and, everyone who was on the plane.
If not, they can be heading to Abuja and land in Asaba.
They may not even take off. I'm just saying. All right. Daniel Bwala described as impressive the president's handling of the alleged infraction committed by some of the president's ministers, adding that the president could have chosen to protect them, but he did not, and commended the policy that reduced the cost of governance, which before was now, well, of course, before now was very bloated. In his words, APC is a party. President Bola Ahmed Tinubu is my motivation. If supporting him will take me to the APC, then so be it. Let's also, have you watch that also.
Ministers that were allegedly reported to have, committed infraction. Instead of protecting them, he asked that the due course of law should have his own course. He suspended somebody without wasting time. That, to me, is impressive because it's about the people. Secondly, there has been this outcry that the government is bloated and the rest. Yesterday, he introduced a policy that reduced the cost of governance. And today, he told me it is just the beginning. There are many more decisions of government that will reduce the cost of governance. What have we been talking about as citizens? If you don't have personal grudge against someone, if it is on policy issue, when policies are going correctly, and what I'm saying apart from today that I'm talking here, you all need to visit my Twitter page. In the last few days, I have been expressing my surprise and appreciation to the president for the decision he's taking. So this is not about political party. And you need to know that, like I said, I was with him before I left. And I was doggedly committed to him. I told him today, I am committing to play my part to support your administration. And I have no apologies to anybody.
You are back in APC?
I have no apologies. APC is a party. President Bola Ahmed Tinubu is my motivation. If supporting him will take me to APC, so be it.
Well.
Yeah, I mean, I always, like to chip in, that the president cannot protect anybody. This thing that we do where we, I said it yesterday, that we wait for the president to give orders before the FCC react, before agencies of government that have been set up, with functions, wait for the president to give a go-ahead before they act. That's wrong. The reason that they are set up in the first place is to be independent of the government and to act when there's reason to. So, no, the president cannot protect anybody, like he's describing. And nobody should be commending the president for allowing agencies of government to act. If the EFCC has spotted an infraction, they should act. If the Code of Criminal Bureau has spotted an infraction, they should act. There's nothing like, the president could have protected the person but decided not to. That is completely wrong. And I don't understand the standards that Daniel Bwala is working with. It's embarrassing at this point.
And another thing I'd like to react to is, of course, when he said if he's about President Tinubu and if President Tinubu will lead him to APC, so be it. I mean, it reminds me of what I spoke about in Which Way Nigeria. It is what we see happening in a lot of political parties, right? We see a number of people throwing themselves, in all fairness, many people followed Labour Party because of Peter Obi. It wasn't really about the Labour Party. It was more about Peter Obi. In the same breath, we're starting to see a number of people throwing themselves. Now, in this case, he's throwing himself at APC because of, quote-unquote, Tinubu. But then what we need to ask ourselves is, what are these parties' ideologies? Do these parties even have ideologies at all? And what do the parties stand for? What do you as an individual stand for? I don't think that our politicians align themselves to parties based on the fact that they say, okay, this party aligns, you know, it has values that I align myself with. It's more about anywhere belle face. Yeah. And it's embarrassing because I was looking online and I saw some of the tweets that Daniel Bwala put out about the Tinubu administration when they were in office. So many things he said. You know, he insulted Chatham House. He said, Chatham House, show of shame. You want to be president by avoiding answering questions. Instead, you are redirecting the answers to El Rufai, Alaki, and co. Nigerians want to be governed by a person, not a robot, who cannot exercise independent thought in answering questions. He said in another tweet, he said, the spokesman said people are searching the Constitution from sections 1 to 320 to find a ground to disqualify Tinubu. No, no, no. He has been disqualified from the Electoral Act before we even reach the Constitution. By the time we reach the Constitution, it will be to convict him. So he spoke so strongly against this government. Now, whilst people are allowed to change their mind, I have always been of the opinion that you're allowed to change your mind about someone and about a thing. But what has significantly changed about the APC between when he was criticizing them and now is what you know, I'm trying to understand.
Just about we're going to share, you know, all the views from social media, but just about 2 weeks ago, there was still news reports where he said, if you give President Tinubu 30 years, nothing will change.
Well, he said, you know, all the other parties there had to be a strong coalition for them to be able to topple the APC.
Exactly. I'm going to address some of all these things, but let's quickly share with you how people are reacting on social media to, of course, Daniel Bwala's statements. This is from Deep Fight. It says, hunger na your mate. But of course, referring to Daniel Bwala and maybe also inferring that he is heading to the APC to see what he can gain. This one here says, from Lapuski, says, believe politicians at your own risk. Politics in Nigeria now like transfer window, which is you know,
the truth. Yeah.
Every year people move to where they feel like they will benefit the most.
And this is from Azubike Oshimili. He says Daniel Bwala has taken advantage of the January transfer window to dump Atiku Abubakar and PDP for PBHC. That's of course President Bola Ahmed Tinubu and the APC. Here we go, he says. These are some of the tweets. This is from Olakube Hertz Media. Olabode Olajide says, politicians have no shame. They only go where the yam is. No ideology, no principle. They are ants finding sugar. I pity the supporters. This guy will get an appointment now. Expect Doyin Okupe and Dele Momodu soon. And this is the truth. They only go where the yam is. They go where the sugar is, just like with ants. And honestly, I pity the supporters because there are people who have been trolling people, insulting people because their faves belong to one political party and are pushing one ideology. So what happens now? All the people who are stands, social media stands and fans of Daniel Bwala and championing, you know, his cause, or those who were fans of Doyin Okupe when he was in the Labour Party, what happens to them now?
I mean, so this is my response to you brought it up already, the fact that there's no political ideology in Nigeria. It is really where I can benefit from, you know, and it was funny. I said it was funny when Doyin Okupe was talking about leftists and center-rightists.
Yes, I'm just like, where?
Where? All those things don't exist in Nigerian, the average Nigerian politician's ideology. Doesn't exist. Wherever you think will benefit you the most, that's where you go. And the same thing that, you know, Daniel Bwala seems to be showing. Because he was in the APC before. He dumped the APC because of the Muslim ticket, if you remember, in, was it August or so? 2022, I think. He dumped the APC and then moved to the PDP, claiming that his beliefs were not in alignment with the Muslim ticket, and so he was going to the PDP.
So now his beliefs in alignment with Muslim
all of that has been suspended. There's no belief at this point. And so, you know, when they talk about ideologies they don't have, that's one thing. Another thing to also quickly mention, I had to put down some things yesterday. Yes, barely 2 weeks ago, we were speaking about President Tinubu, and he has been very, very vocal against the president. Yes, he's allowed to have a change of mindset, but there has to be something reasonable that has given you reasons to change your mindset. It cannot be because the president has made moves to reduce, you know, the cost of governance by simply reducing the number of people he's traveling with. That's not. I mean, that cannot be it. And you can't. I don't think you can convince anybody that that's a thing that you saw. That the person that you said 2-3 weeks ago that if you give him 30 years cannot do anything.
All of a sudden,
exactly.
Because he's allowed, he's suspended Betta Edu, that's what has significantly changed.
Exactly. And again, that is not even left for the president to do. These are things that are expected. Nobody's celebrating a fish for swimming. I should also mention that I feel bad for Atiku Abubakar because I think he has seen the most betrayal, you know, than any other politician in Nigeria's history. He has seen more people. I think at this point he should realize that everybody who has been tagging along with him on his presidential campaign, all this while, are people who are just looking to feed off him. And that's one of the reasons there were rumors that he was very tight-handed in 2023 elections. He didn't, release cash. Exactly. He chose to not give shishing. But I feel bad for him because he has seen from the G5 to now Daniel Bwala and a couple of other people who have dumped the party since he lost. And it really just shows that everybody, almost everybody who was tagging along with him, supporting him, calling him, you know, their president and all that, were really just deceiving him, hoping that he would win. Some of them have seen that, okay, it might be almost impossible to defeat President Tinubu 2027, so it's best to jump ship now and, you know, be with the winning team, you know, and whatnot.
At the end of the day, they're not permanent friends or permanent enemies, only permanent interests. That's what it is.
What else am I missing out? Anyway, that's all the things I don't want to add. But it's very interesting, and this is where we are with Nigeria's political space. Congratulations. And I also felt a little bit embarrassed. You know, I'm hoping it was not a journalist that was interviewing Daniel Bwala when she asked about the APC question, and they said if the president, you know, wants him to join APC.
There was a question.
She said congratulations. I'm hoping that's not a journalist. Anyway.
Well, congratulations. At the end of the day, he has freedom of aligning himself with any political party. I mean, it is what it is. Right. It's been quite the conversation we've had this morning on Breakfast Central. Let's do a quick recap in case you're just tuning in.
Yes, we spoke about the rising cases of suicide in South Africa.
We're joined by Dr. Oman, and away from that, PDP spokesman sings praises of ruling party. That's, of course, Daniel Bwala, and congratulations in quotes to him.
And of course, we did do a short monologue on unraveling Nigeria's political class. Of course, that was done by the great Olive Emodi. But that's not all this morning. We have a lot more coming your way in the second half of Breakfast Central.
Suspend Interior Minister now, says PDP and YPP.
And also, we will take a look inside Edo State politics as we inch closer and closer to the elections.
All right, next we have the newspaper review. Stay with us.
Africa needs its own storytellers, people who understand the continent because they're from it. People who know that news is more than just a conversation starter, it's our stories. Because these stories run deeper than headlines and segments. It's about digging deeper to get the facts and telling the human side of every single story, not just the echoes from foreign headlines and perspectives. It's time to take back our narratives and share them in our voices. The birth of Africa's New Age reporting, and this is where it begins, right here at NewsCentralTV. Stories that put Africa first. Africa is rising. Again, we hear our sounds echo on the other side. Afrobeat and Afropop reinvented, hip life brought back to life, new energy infused into Kwaito and Kwela. Africa is balling. Every stroke, every shot, every race, we find our place at the top. taking the helm of real power, new hopes for democracies. A breed of entrepreneurial tigers, audacious storytellers, and a promising generation raring to go. Truly, Africa is rising. And this is where the stories that define our continent live.
Has 60% of its entire population, and it's time for their voices to be heard loud and clear. Involving the young people in nation building is not merely a question of inclusion, but one that is vital for economic growth, innovation, peace, and security. Fafanua Africa provides the platform for the teeming young and vibrant population of our dear continent to voice their concerns with one goal in mind: provide profound and tangible solutions that will help redefine and reposition the future of Africa. Join us every Friday at 2 p.m. West African Time, 4 p.m. East African Time, and 3 p.m. Central African Time on NewsCentralTV. Fafanua Africa, redefining Africa.
The big stories on the papers. We're starting off with the Nigerian Tribune. On the front page, the big story says, CBN sacks board of Union, Keystone, Polaris banks. Court to deliver judgments in suit seeking to stop elections from holding on Saturdays. Attack on Ejocho, Kogi government arrests six, I beg your pardon. How I was attacked. Amoteku arrests 2 caught with human head and body parts in Saki. Oh, wow. EFCC to grill Edu, Sadia, Halima daily until there's an ellipsis after that. I don't know what that until represents. Prospective core members now to register with NIN. Army redeploys 975 officers, cancels 120 postings. Exercise a routine, according to spokesman. Alleged $6 billion Mambila power fraud. Trainka raises the alarm as court remands Agunloye in Kuje prison. Otedola donates 1 billion naira to Lagos Security Trust Fund on page 29. Makinde hands over 100 patrol vehicles to police, army, others. I will appear in court to prosecute people charged with corruption, says ICPC chairman. These are the stories on the front page of the Nigerian Tribune. And this morning, joining us to analyze the stories is the publisher CKN News, Chris Kehinde Nwandu. Thank you very much for joining us. Good morning.
Thank you very much for having me.
All right. So now let's go back to the front page of the paper. I want you, of course, everybody has been talking about this, so I need to get your reaction as well. The Beta, Edu, Halima Shehu, Madia Umar Farouk case and all the investigations that have been happening and potentially involving Olubunmi Tunji-Ojo. What do you make of these stories? And you know, what does it say to you about governance in our country?
And I'm sure you're talking about the Edu Gate, as it is. Although that is just been taken over by the issues with the banks, but you can say that the banks seems to have taken prominent front pages this morning. But still talking about the issue and the matters arising from the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs, it's quite a sad one because so much expectation from the individuals involved, especially the Minister of Humanitarian Affairs, Beta Edu, for several reasons. One, she's the youngest member of the cabinet. She's just 36. Secondly, she's, well, with all sense of responsibility, she's a lady. And it has been this clamor for not too young. What's it now?
Not too young
to run.
Yeah.
And most of us have been advocating that it's need for us to have more younger people within the cabinet and within the executive level so that they can be able to, you know, learn through the ropes and take over from the so-called old politicians, as we said. So she was a classical example of what a young, not too young to run. ought to be. But within a few weeks or months, within the saddle, and this is coming up, and it's not good enough. The second is when I talk about female, we have always advocated that there should be more women. You know that the affirmative, what's they call it now? Whatever.
Affirmative action.
Yes, for women, I think 33% or thereabouts. So we wanted more women within the cabinet so that they can contribute to their own quota to governance. And I think the present president will be able to do that by making sure that he has so many women within the cabinet. So this coming at this time is not looking good. Then the last point for me is also that if you look at the trajectory of all the people involved in this, all of them are women.
Yeah.
Sadia, who was the former Minister of Humanitarian Affairs, the lady, Alima, who is in charge of the disbursement of the money, then Beta. All of them, the same ministry, 3 women. So it doesn't speak well. But we must give kudos to the president, because for the first time, we are seeing a president that is very proactive, who listens to the voice of the masses, who tend to take action. Unlike what we had in last government of Muhammadu Buhari, who will take his time, that's if at all it hurts at all, and just do whatever. So, but this is a clear signal to the ministers and all those in government that it is no longer what would I call it? No,
so I'd like to react to something that you said, of course.
Yes.
You've talked about the not too young to run movement and, you know, the affirmative action, 35% affirmative action. Is it 33 or 35% affirmative action?
It's about 33, 35.
And talking about how we need more women in politics. Unfortunately, these women have acted out of order.
They dropped the ball.
So would you say that this is now painting a bad picture for the campaign against women in politics and young people in politics? And I ask this because for the longest time, we've had older people in politics and we've had men who are the bulk of the population in politics. And there hasn't been any much difference. We've actually seen a lot of corruption from these men and these older people. So would you say that it's a fair narrative to judge them based on their age and their gender? Because those who have been there haven't done any different.
No, it's more of individual. What I'm saying is that, but if you are driving a particular narrative, there are certain people you look at and say, look at what happened during the Obasanjo regime. We still talk about Okonjo-Iweala. We still talk about Obiase Kwesili. We still talk about Dora Akunyili.
Yeah.
Those are people, women in government. So they start as a reference. The fact that an individual did something does not necessarily paint the whole. What I'm trying to say is that they would have enforced, that kind of enhanced that argument that, look at social person, she's 36. I'm talking about the youngest member of the Federal Executive Council. It was not just given, normally in those days, you just see them, women being given Ministry of Women Affairs, most of those obscure ministries that you have. But you've seen instances where with women, in the last regime, we have a woman that was Minister of Finance. And economic planning, we've seen women taking up very, very strong roles. And Minister of Humanitarian Affairs is a very, very sensitive area because it has to do with the poor. And I guess if you look at the trajectory, all the ministers, which there are two, anyway, all the ministers within that ministry are all women. They've been women. And I believe that the president were deliberate in picking them because of the agenda and because of the fact that they believe that they have the capacity to be able to reach out to the poor. And we're seeing what the influences are. But let us put it on record that these are still allegations. These are still allegations. They are still being investigated. In as much as the minister has admitted that she did that, within the law, you are assumed and presumed to be innocent until it is proven. So let us just wait and see the investigation panel that was set up by the president to be able to look at this, and the EFC, what the EFC sees, and let's see what comes out. But the fact remains that we don't want this to be like the other probes before it. There'll be so many instances, if you understand what I mean. Let me give you a classical example. What happened? That we had one Auditor General of the Federation.
Yeah, we had about Chetlawa, we had a lot of them.
Yes, over 100 billion. At the end of it, we said there was a play bargain and returned 40 or 41 million, and he was let go. Recently, he was top banned in one of the states in the north.
It's the same thing with, the past EFCC chairman, Abdurrashid Bawa and Ibrahim Magu.
Let me even take
They've had their corruption allegations.
Let me even take it before. You've forgotten off the mic.
That, I believe that was Tunji.
Okay, so the NDIC and the rest of them.
Yeah. So quickly, let's go to the Punch newspapers. We need to work with time here. CBN Sachs Union, Polaris, Keystone Bank boards. Modibo, over 25 bank chairman, MDs, directors asked to resign. Interim boards likely today. CBN warns against panic withdrawals. Also, Edu, EFCC quizzes top ministry officials. ICPC recovers 50 billion naira. The Naira plunges to 1,082 to the dollar after CBN $2 billion repayment. And also, Obasanjo's ex-minister Ogbonmwan arraigned for $6 billion Mambila contract. Marketers to meet Dangote over fuel supply. COVID-19 not over. 10,000 deaths recorded in December, says the WHO. Sanwo-Olu hails Otedola's $1 billion Naira security donation. In the interest of time, let's quickly just talk about the CBN story here. Sacking the board of Union, Polaris, and Keystone Bank, Keystone Banks basically, and then maybe also talk about the ex-minister Ogbonmwan arraigned $6 billion Mambila contract.
Yes.
Start with CBN.
Yes, for the CBN, and this CBN is asking within the law establishing this. There is the Central Bank Act that establishes the Central Bank, and you know that CBN is the banker's bank, as it's known. So. It is within the purview to be able to investigate and take decision on. And this is a good one because a lot of confidence may be eroded if such action is not taken. We noticed what happened before the consolidation of the banks under Obasanjo, where banks were failing and dropping, where people were establishing banks, families were establishing banks, and before you know it, people's money were trapped and the rest of them. So there have been certain allegations, and don't forget that the president inaugurated an investigator to take a forensic look at the books of the central bank. And some of the recommendations he made is what you are seeing now. Now, yesterday, the CBN has to wield the big stick by sacking the board and also the chief executive of those banks. Now, new ones have been appointed. Now, for me, that is just the first stop. The second one is that all those that were indicted, sort of, have to be prosecuted. Because that is the only way you can bring confidence within the system. And a situation where people just wake up and just find themselves within the corridors of... Those money doesn't belong to them. In as much as some of them are just shareholders, but majority of most money belong to certain individuals. You and I, the 10,000 we drop in the bank, the 5,000 we drop in the bank, that I would decide to go to the bank, I want to go and withdraw my 10,000, they can only give me 5,000. Even though I have a contract. Because in law, which I read, in law, a valid contract is a contract that is signed, sealed, and delivered. Yeah. So if I have a contract with a bank and drop money in a bank, then the onus is on the bank. Whenever I go to the bank to pick my money, I will be able to pick it. Because when I was dropping my money, it didn't say I should drop only 10,000. Yeah. You understand what I'm trying to say? So if I drop 100,000 with you and I want to withdraw it today, I should be able to use that contract that we signed. Means that you must give it to me. So you cannot be telling me. It's because we take things for granted. In certain countries, what happens in Nigeria wouldn't happen. I don't see any reason why I can go to bank to want to pick up my 100,000. You say you will give me only 20,000. That is a breach of contract. So what I'm saying in a sense is that the CBN has done the right thing by trying to save the customers of these various banks, and they must have seen certain things in the bet. Let us see how they take it further. Yeah,
I think it's from the report. You know, they cited financial inclusion, Financial Act law. I think there's a law that I read it, section 12 CJH. I think. You know, and of course, I think one of them is also with the constitution of those boards and the constitution of the banks itself. Those were maybe some of the things that you're looking at.
Now, some of them were invited. I remember that the former deputy governor of the Central Bank, Lemo, was invited several times by the investigator and the CBN to be able to clarify certain things, and he couldn't. And they gave a last warning that if he doesn't, then he is a main player in this business, in this particular thing. When it gets to do with Union Bank, when it gets to do with also Titan Bank. But as I said, good enough, a lot of confidence have been brought within the system, and we hope that this will be able to reimpose some kind of confidence. And then when Ogbonmwan, talking about Ogbonmwan, good enough. There is something that seems to be happening. You know that the last regime of Muhammadu Buhari is one of the main cardinal points on fighting corruption. But we saw how he fought corruption. When Tinubu was coming in, I don't think there was any time he mentioned anything about fighting corruption. I think it was more of economy and the rest of them. But from what we are seeing, it seems that he is systematically fighting corruption in a way and manner that most people didn't believe or didn't know that he used to do. Ogbonmwan case traced back to the regime of Olusegun Obasanjo, when he was Minister of Power. And it was even the former president that triggered it. He said Ogbonmwan should be invited to give reason or how he was able to deal with issues of money relating to Mambila Plateau power plant. That he Olusegun Aremu Obasanjo is ready to appear before any panel, and there is also in court to be able to bear witness to what is. So the graph agency is moving. He was invited, and he has been granted bail. He was granted bail. What is happening is that he has not been able to perfect his bail. And as I've said before, I hope that it will not stop at that. Everybody, until we start making example of people. The reason why we are today is because we just don't make example of people. People just misbehave, and we just make the noise and we let it go. Some of these things will be rest assured that within the next few days, forget about it. I'll move on to another story.
And we have a very short attention
span.
Very. Actions have consequences in many places except Nigeria.
Then also when I mean we, the journalists, the media, what we need to be doing is not just pushing this narrative just 1 week, and we should be following up. That is what happened. That's why you hear all the gates that happen in the United States, in the UK, and the rest of them. Media follow up. They even help the investigative panels, they help security agencies to be able to unearth. You saw what a young man just did recently with the certificate in some of these West African countries. And what is that? That is what we need to. So we don't just go back and say, oh, another story is developing, and we just step back and leave the stories as they were. Right. We must continue to follow up on such.
All right, let's move away from the Punch newspaper to the Daily Independent newspaper. On the front page of Daily Independent, operators ask NIACOM to punish claims defaulters. Worried they are denting image of insurance sector. Air travels hit 99% of 2019 levels as recovery continues in November, according to IATA. $6 billion Mambila scam, court remands ex-minister Agunloye in Kuje Correctional Center. You've just made reference to that. ICPC chairman promises to lead prosecution team in court. Sanwo-Olu receives a $10 1 billion naira donation to Lagos Security Trust Fund. Supreme Court dismisses SDP suit against Fintiri's re-election on page 6. Governor Eno seeks Tinubu support over Ibom Sea Ports oil palm projects. Now, this is a very sad one, but a reflection of the reality that it is. Global unemployment set to worsen in 2024, according to the UN. CBN sacks MDs, boards of TTB, Union, Keystone, and Polaris banks. At the top of the paper, 2 stories there. Customs seizes illegal goods worth 16 trillion naira in 2023, according to Comptroller General, explains 532 billion naira revenue shortfall. Final story, Obaseki is a betrayer, says Edo Deputy Governor, for refusal to back gubernatorial bid. I think we should start with that. Obaseki, the drama in between Philip Shaibu and Governor Godwin Obaseki.
Well, politicians are what they are. Sincerely, if we talk of trust deficit, it lives with politicians. So they say something to the politician, tell you, my sister, if it's just a good morning, my sister, how are you? You need to go out of the studio to look at properly and make sure that it is actual money, irrespective of whatever your wristwatch is telling you. Because at times somebody can tell you good morning, but if you go out, it's still dark. It has been when they are frolicking and doing whatever they are doing, we didn't know what they are doing. We are giving all the best of scenarios, and we believe that all was well. But now it has come to a governorship 2024, or we are hearing all this, oh, Obaseki. You ask yourself, who won? Yes, Shuaibu has been an astute politician in the House of Reps or something, and the State House of Assembly. He was in finance and the rest of them. But it also takes somebody to pick somebody. Yeah. If you understand what I mean, that is politics, that is work all over the world. The problem is that the way we play that's called godfatherism in politics across the globe. Donald Trump couldn't have become the president of United States if not for certain individuals that contributed, in as much as he was a rich man, but there was that contribution helped in their certain individuals. The same thing, the current president, he was the former vice president to Obama for about 8 years. So you learn, so there's always, but the problem is how we play our godfatherism in this part of the world. Now, coming to this thing, the problem is Obaseki doesn't want his deputy to be the next governor for reasons best known to him. According to him, from what we read and what we heard, he said that it is not proper for someone like Shuaibu, who has been the deputy for about 8 years, and also coming from the same local government with Oshomole. They are from the same local, in fact, within the same place. Oshomole was the governor of Edo State for 8 years. Shuaibu has become the deputy governor for about 8 years. And it's this thing that is with that this thing should be able to move to other parts of the state. But for me, it's neither here nor there. Every individual has the right to aspire to whatever. It is left for the people of Edo State to determine whether they want to vote for him or not. But what they are doing now is just watching their dirty linens and saying, I will just watch. We have taken, we bought our ticket. We are sitting by the ringside and be watching the bout and see how it goes. Unfortunately, I just came back from the East 2 days ago. I come to realize that the deputy governor now has a radio station in Benin. I don't know whether you're aware. For the 20-30 minutes I was listening to the radio station, all I was hearing was Obaseke, his wife, and the rest of them. And most of it, you know politics in Nigeria now. If you want to play politics, what most politicians do now, they set up a radio station, set up a television station, set up newspaper, and the rest. We know how this thing rules and the rest of them. But the fact is that I believe that Shuaibu has the right to aspire to. He has been having issue with his boss for the past. In fact, you know that he was practically moved away from the government house and was given one obscure office somewhere. But let's see how this part. The governor had come out boldly now to endorse somebody. I've forgotten his name. And the past 24 hours, 48 hours, people have been endorsing him. So it is, if he doesn't get the ticket of the PDP, whether we now move to another party to get that ticket is left to be seen. Oh, but let's wait and see what happens.
I want you also to clarify, some aspect of the whole conversation concerning Betta Edu and the likes. Of course, Agunloye that you mentioned. From your perspective, the president needs to be given kudos for, the current drive against corruption and for, these prosecutions. Mm-hmm. Does it mean that these institutions, these agencies, the EFCC, the ICPC wouldn't work if, there's no president in office, that asks them to work?
They're as good as the power given them by the president. And that's just it. If the president, no, that is not what it's supposed to be. Yeah. They are independent. The ICPC independent, corrupt, blah, 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 blah. They're supposed to be independent. The EFCC has established it. They are not supposed to be, but the first thing you have to say, who is the appointing officer? Who is the appointing officer of EFCC chairman? It's the president. Who is the appointing officer of... so they can only work if given the... You remember what happened during the Ribadu time? It was because Olusegun Obasanjo gave him all the power to work with. But if you have a president that is so lopsided that doesn't care and doesn't allow the agencies to do their work, there's nothing the chairman, the EFCC chairman or ICP. He can only work within the ambit of... That is what... institutionally. And that was why we've always said that the problem we have is we build more of personality rather than institutions. Irrespective of whoever is there, that agency is supposed to be independent. In fact, part of his mandate that even if the president does anything wrong, in as much as he has immunity, the president has an immunity, but it doesn't mean that whatever he does, immediately he leaves office, he can be prosecuted. That's what the law says. And that is why you see Donald Trump saying a few days ago, oh, no, he shouldn't be prosecuted, that he had immunity and did whatever, and somebody was saying, no. The fact that you had immunity doesn't mean that you're going to derail the election that the Americans had, and trying to find a way of going around it and just saying that it's... So it's as much, but it's like the IG, it's like the chief of army. If the chief of army staff is not doing what he's supposed to do, you've forgotten that the president, former president, sent the IGP to Benue State.
No, he didn't go. I remember. So, all right, we need to go. Chris Wandu, publisher CKN News, thank you very much for stopping by.
Thank you very much.
It was great seeing you. And of course, we hope that you enjoyed the analysis of the newspapers this morning. Remember, be a part of it. Simply tweet at NewsCentralTV and let us know your thoughts on these stories. Also on YouTube, or share your comments with us. We'll be eager to share them on television. We'll take a short break. When we come back, we, of course, are back to our top stories.
Africa is rising. Again, we hear our sounds echo on the other side. Afrobeat and Afropop reinvented, hip life brought back to life, new energy infused into Kwaito and Kwela. Africa is balling. Every stroke, every shot, every raise, we find our place at the top. Taking the helm of real power, new hopes for democracies. A breed of entrepreneurial tigers, audacious storytellers, and a promising generation raring to go. Truly, Africa is rising. And this is where the stories that define our continent live.
With a cross-section of news on the continent, engaging in analytical reports, resident doctors in Nigeria commenced a 5-day warning strike. Queues have hit the major cities in Nigeria, bringing you authentic stories as they happen. I am Adeshawa Olushoga. This is News Central.
Welcome back. Now, following the recent controversy in the award of contracts at the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs and Poverty Alleviation, the People's Democratic Party, PDP, has asked President Bola Tinubu to suspend Bumi Tunji-Ojo as Minister of Interior. In a statement issued by its PDP spokesperson, Debo Olu-Nagba, I beg your pardon, Ologun-Nagba, the main opposition party asked Tinubu to immediately order an investigation and possible prosecution of the minister.
Recall that a leaked document showed that New Planet Project Limited, a company founded by Tunji-Ojo, got a 438 million naira consultancy contract from the Humanitarian Affairs Ministry. Denying any wrongdoing, the minister said that he resigned from the company in February February of 2011? Or
2019.
2019, I beg your pardon, when he was elected as a lawmaker in the House of Representatives. But the PDP said that Tunji-Ojo should be fired. He made a lame excuse by claiming that he has no interest in the company despite his confession of owning huge shares in the firm.
Now, the party describes as inexcusable that the two ministers directly entrusted with the well-being of Nigerians reportedly used a company in which the Minister of Interior has a huge interest to allegedly siphon funds meant for poor Nigerians under the guise of consultancy fees for unsubstantiated verification of households in the country. Now, recall that Betta Edu was suspended on Monday as the Minister of Humanitarian Affairs and Poverty Alleviation over the controversy. Joining us to further the conversation is Adeni Adams. He's a member of the PDP and was head of the campaign and strategy for the PDP in the 2023 Lagos gubernatorial elections. Good morning, Mr. Adams. Thanks for joining us.
Morning.
Great to have you. Anyway, before we go, I'll bring that up. I want your quick thoughts on why you think Tunji-Ojo should be, or if you think Tunji-Ojo should be suspended. Has, what he's currently being accused of, is it big enough to warrant his suspension?
Yeah, good morning, viewers. Very well. Thanks again for having me. Number one, I think we need to define the word suspension. Suspension is not that you've been asked to go permanently. Suspension is like recusing yourself so that the proper investigation could be conducted.
So for me, if we have that kind of humongous amount and people are, tongues are wagging, I think the honorable thing, even for the person in question, is to step aside so that proper investigation can be done. Because the belief of Nigerians, because we've been battered with series of corruption issues, the belief will be that, okay, you're guilty, so the best thing, and that if you're still there, you're going to be impacting the course of investigation. So I believe that he should probably just step aside so that proper investigation can be done.
Well, I'm not sure how, him being there, stops an investigation, but let's take a short break. Give us a few seconds and we'll be back to continue this conversation.
Africa needs its own storytellers, people who understand the continent because they're from it. People who know that news is more than just a conversation starter, it's our stories. Because these stories run deeper than headlines and segments. It's about digging deeper to get the facts and telling the human side of every single story, not just the echoes from foreign headlines and perspectives. It's time to take back our narratives and share them in our voices. The birth of Africa's New Age reporting, and this is where it begins, right here at NewsCentralTV, with stories that put Africa first.
News on the go, live reports, real-time updates, unfiltered stories. I'm Bernard Akede. This is News Central.
News Central ní ẹ̀ ń wò.
Welcome back. We're still speaking this morning with Adeni Adams, and of course, speaking about Olubunmi Tunji-Ojo and the call for his suspension by the People's Democratic Party. Ms. Adams, you were saying, your bit, before we went on a break. So welcome back once again. I was asking, do we even, need to have him suspended before an investigation, is carried on? Is it possible that an investigation can be carried on by whatever agencies of government while he's still there, and he still will be suspended or fired if found guilty?
Because of the belief and because of the system we run, it's going to be more, it's easier when such person is not there. So it would be better for if, there's a worthy, not just frivolous, not flimsy allegations. If there's a hello, sorry, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Yes, we can. Please go ahead.
Okay, yeah. I think it's either you decide to go voluntarily, to excuse yourself voluntarily, or you have to be suspended so that the investigation can be properly carried out. It's a bit difficult in this climb of ours for you to be seated and you're found guilty. It becomes very difficult. So okay. I think the best thing is for the person to recuse himself or herself so that the investigation, even in the interest of the person clearing his or her name, I think it's better that way.
Does it matter for those who advocate that, for example, the case of Femi Pedro, who advocates that, you know, he, for Better Edu, was advocating for Better Edu, that she's learned from her mistake and should be given a second chance? Does it matter when some people argue that he's been a very effective and, you know, maybe one of the most effective ministers in this cabinet, especially with all the overhauling that's happened with Nigeria's immigration? So does that in any way count for an argument for those who want to plead his cause?
I think that should be left to his lawyers. If he's found guilty or if he has to be prosecuted, I think that's left to his lawyers to go and plead that in court for leniency. For us, you see, the major problem we're having in Nigeria is corruption. And it's just that people undermine the system. So if we keep talking from both sides of our mouth, then I think there's a major problem.
Well, you said the main problem we have is corruption, and, you know, I can't agree more. A number of us would agree with that. What is it about Nigeria's politics that makes it easy for people to cut away huge sums of money? And it keeps happening over and over again. We're making a lot of noise about these ones. The unfortunate reality is that it might not be the end. We will still, most likely, still see more people stealing Nigeria's commonwealth. So what is it about us, our country, that makes it easy for politicians to cut away large sums of money?
Yes, because we gratify corrupt people. The enforcement of boundaries is very, very thin. So we need to be, because if a crime is not punished, you're sending a message to the people that you can come in and do it and get away with it. So how many people have been punished or taken to court for corruption?
All right.
That's the problem. Enforcement of boundaries is very crucial. So if I know that, okay, if I take something, I'm going to be punished, then, I mean, I begin to think twice before trying to do it. But if I say that, okay, look, if I take it and I can get my way with it without being, without being punished, then that's an attraction.
Yeah, but, I mean...
So the system doesn't punish corrupt people enough.
Yeah, I mean, we could argue, you know, that, you know, and, you know, like I've been saying, the suspension of one person doesn't stop, you know, the main issue in the system, which is, you know, I mean, there is a culture through which government funds have been diverted for so long, you know, and of course, we might be talking about it now on the level of a minister, but it happens even in the lowest level of civil service, you know, in almost every civil service office across Nigeria, on the local, on the state level and also local government level also. It's happening everywhere. So, you know, these suspensions may not really be the answer, you know, to actually fighting corruption. You know, we'll have you speak on that. But another question I want you to address is, your party, the PDP, has also been blamed for doing almost absolutely nothing in the fight against corruption. Aside a few cases here and there, you know, that can be pointed at, you know, maybe Tafa Balogun during Obasanjo's time and a few others. The PDP also, you know, could be said to not, you know, be the one to be telling anybody now about fighting corruption. What would your response be to that?
Well, I think anybody that is saying that will probably be one, being insensitive and assaulting the sensibilities of Nigerians. Let's even agree without conceding that, let's assume rather without conceding that PDP had their own, pockets of corruption issues. Is PDP still running the government now? I want to believe that, okay, the reason PDP was voted out was because of this and a few other things. So must we continue to go back? So if APC is voted out tomorrow and another party, say PDP, is voted in, is this the same cycle we're going to run? No. The question is we must be moving forward. If Chief Obasanjo could, I mean, punish a sitting Inspector General of Police and a few other people, then that means some progress was made. But the progress was not enough for Nigerians. So they decided to vote APC in. Then we should make more progress. We shouldn't be going back to what this one did in the past that, okay, because we could not do it enough. So because we could not do it enough, PDP could not do it enough in quotes. That is the more reason why APC must better what PDP did in a bad way. No, that shouldn't be. It's Nigerians that are suffering, not the parties.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it is really just, people in response to people who say, when they're talking about corruption, PDP should keep quiet. That's really what I'm referring to. But, you've answered that. But I also want to talk about, I want you to address the thing I also asked, that the systemic corruption that is going on in Nigeria will not be fought just by suspending one person or the other. Suspension doesn't end, what we're dealing with. Maybe jail time, but we've not seen a lot of these persons that have been suspended in the past, including Babachir Lawal, if you remember, with the grass cutting scandal. None of them have been fully prosecuted and, asked, to go to jail. So would the PDP also go ahead and ask that if some of these persons that have been named are found guilty, that they should be jailed?
Oh, yeah, basically, I mean, that's why what I said when I spoke about the enforcement of boundaries. Because you see, if you are not punished for an offense, those coming after you will want to better what you have done in terms of that offense, because they believe that they can do anything and get away with it. Again, it's not even just about the systemic corruption. It's even the society. The society, again, is also guilty. You'll find that people, aside from punishing the offenders, a serious orientation must be done. Reorientation must be done for the people, because we worship money. We worship people we worship wealth. You'll find that when we were growing up, or when our fathers were growing up, you have to account for your wealth, but not anymore. So because we worship wealth, it is only the wealthy that can talk. And you also find that it's not just even about corruption in the public service. Look at the way people make money these days. So we need to address that. Aside the fact that we need to punish people, and we need to be seen to be punishing them, not just punish them. We need to be seen to be punishing them. We also need serious reorientation. And look at if the role model of any younger man, especially the one on the street today, is they want to be a member of the Nigerian Union of Road Transport Workers, because that is our avenue from money making. A lot of things has to be done, not the way we're going about it. We must be deliberate. We must be deliberate about punishing corruption, and we must be deliberate about installing a system. You see, it's not about the discretion of the president. It shouldn't be. It's not about the discretion of the, of the Speaker of the House of Reps or the Senate President. It has to be a system. This system must be entrenched. A system must be developed and entrenched so that anybody that comes in will have to adhere to the system. So even the judges, everybody.
Okay, let's talk very quickly, and I would like you to answer this as quickly as possible because we're already running out of time. We've talked so passionately about how enforcing boundaries is very critical in the fight against corruption. Do you think that in also strengthening political structures, enforcing boundaries is very important? And I ask this because we've seen that the PDP, the G5 has been like maybe some would say it's been a bone in the throat of the PDP, and nothing has been done to them. There's Nyesom Wike on the other hand, who's a member of the People's Democratic Party, but seems very, very strongly loyal to the All Progressives Congress. And now, news reaching us today is that Daniel Bwala has left the PDP, the People's Democratic Party, and, will be heading back to APC, it seems. So talk to us about how all of this impacts the People's Democratic Party, if at all.
Yeah, I agree with you definitely that the political structure must be strengthened. Quickly on Daniel Bwala, was Daniel Bwala a member of PDP? I'll probably say no. It was, for me, I think it was a mercenary. So it was actually brought in to, as a spokesperson, as one of the spokespersons of our presidential candidate, Alhaji Atiku Abubakar. So for me, Daniel wasn't a member of PDP. Also, you see, the way, it's still the same thing about the structure. The structure, the system must be, we cannot continue to run a government, a political party the way it's being run, and we expect to get good results. No, the political structure must be entrenched. It must be strengthened. Imagine there's the provision of the Constitution says that if you defect from party A to party B without the party A being in crisis, you are supposed to lose your position. And what did we hear? What did we get? We heard that the president has intervened. Is the president above the Constitution? No. So the political structure is in comatose. And until it is strengthened, we will continue to produce what we are producing.
It's not just the political structure. Doesn't it feel like, a lot of people that were tagging along with the PDP were opportunists? Atiku Abubakar, at this point, I said earlier that we must feel very betrayed by a lot of the people who claim to be supporting him in the 2023 election. And, if you say that Daniel Bwala, was a mole, like you've described him, how many more?
No, they say he was a mole. I said he was not a member of PDP, was a mercenary. That's different from being a mole.
Well, mercenary, okay, well, how many more mercenaries do you think the PDP currently has?
The bottom line is it's in all parties. That's the funny thing. That's why we talk about the political structure. It's in every single party. The only reason why you're seeing people gravitating towards APC now is because they are in power. That's the plain truth. Our people must continue to be educated and re-educated. You see, politics, until we understand, or we make people to understand that politics is not about you going there to enrich yourself. Again, let's look at the legislators. Look at the kind of money we hear about the legislators. Look at the way they toy with the budget. What stops us from making our legislative arm? What stops us from making it, a part-time thing? They don't, they're not supposed to be going to work every day. They should have something else they're doing.
But I'm sure that this conversation, the question you just asked is another entire conversation for another day. We hope that if we ask you to come, you will join us. But yes, there's so much rejigging that needs to be done to address political structure and how we run politics currently. Mr. Adeniyi Adams, thank you very much for joining us this morning.
You're welcome. Thank you.
All right, we've come to the end of the show today. We hope that you've had a good time. Thank you to our YouTube viewers and our YouTube commenters. We see you and we see your comments in the comment section. Keep them coming.
Absolutely. Just to remind you that there is that big, brand new, shiny show, Jasiri, that comes up at 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. It's going to be another very, very interesting conversation they're having this morning with Catherine and with Law and Tolu, and of course, Blessings Mosugu. Everyone is going to be fully on ground this morning.
Better and edu, and then the other things I saw on social media yesterday. No, you do not have a prayer as a comedian. Yes. Whoever is telling you that is lying.
I have a
Lolo.
We need that. Lolo, say that again. Honestly. What you said to me yesterday was so encouraging. I already have a brand name and things like that.
Wow,
I'm going to do a tour in December.
You know we're talking. Okay. And then she said, Kat, that thing you just said, should I go on? Should I go on? Yesterday we were talking.
And it was funny, yeah.
And yes. It was. And she said, should I go? And I said, oh,
honestly,
no,
being with Gen Zs, you really have to listen to them because they will push their agenda no matter
because if
what
you don't,
say.
you know, it affects our mental health.
Oh, God.
And that's like
don't go there. So, Gen Z and mental health.
Really like the balance on that set. We have the millennials and the Gen Z, blessing sort of in between millennial and Gen Z, giving a very fair representation. So many important and interesting conversations in there. All right, so Osarogie, if you were there, which one will you be?
Which will I be?
Gen Z. Oh, you're a millennial now.
Yeah, I'm somewhere in between also.
Me, I'm a Gen Z.
But I like the balance also. You know.
If I were there, I would be representing the interests of the Gen Zs because I'm a Gen Z.
All right.
Not be you could tell me waiting I be.
If you insist. All right, we need to go. Thanks you very much for joining us this morning. It's been a very interesting conversation. We're going to be back here tomorrow to wrap up the week on Breakfast Central. Remember to be a part of the conversation at every time. Tweet at NewsCentralTV. And here's wishing you a very interesting Thursday ahead. I'm Osarogie Ogbonmwan.
And I am Olive Emodi. See you around.
Africa is rising. Again, we hear our sounds echo on the other side. Afrobeat and Afropop reinvented, hip life brought back to life, new energy infused into Kwaito and Kwela. Africa is balling. Every stroke, every shot, every raise, we find our place at the top. Taking the helm of real power, new hopes for democracies. A breed of entrepreneurial tigers, audacious storytellers, and a promising generation raring to go. Truly, Africa is rising. And this is where the stories that define our continent live.
We go where the market demands, as business, trade, and market analysis are the core of our reports.
Nigerians are beginning to speculate that the price of premium motor spirit might increase.
If it's breaking, we got it. If it affects you, your business, and your pocket, we're on it. We connect the dots of business so you understand what it all means.
It is our hope that the efforts of the federal government to tame inflation yield desired results as soon as possible.
I am Perpetua Fasamipita. You're watching News Central.